Story 1. The Waiting Room's Secret. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of dreary, overcast day that seemed to drain all color from the world. I was sitting in the waiting room of Dr. Eleanor Vance, a renowned neurologist, my leg bouncing with nervous energy. My name is Sarah, and I was there for a follow-up on some persistent, unsettling migraines that had been plaguing me for months. The office was quiet, almost eerily so. The only sounds were the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional rustle of a magazine. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and something else, something vaguely metallic and sweet, like old blood and stale flowers. The waiting room itself was a study in muted tones, beige walls, faded floral patterns on the chairs, and a collection of outdated magazines fanned out on a low coffee table. A few other patients were scattered around, each lost in their own world of discomfort or anticipation. An elderly woman with a perpetually worried expression clutched a worn handbag. A young man with a pale face and dark circles under his eyes stared blankly at the wall. And then there was the child, no older than 7, sitting perfectly still, his eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on something I couldn't see. I tried to distract myself by flipping through a dog-eared copy of National Geographic, but my eyes kept drifting back to the child. There was something profoundly unsettling about his stillness, his unwavering gaze. He wasn't playing with a toy, wasn't fidgeting, wasn't even breathing audibly. He was like a porcelain doll, placed carefully on the chair, observing. I shivered, despite the stuffy warmth of the room. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The clock on the wall seemed to tick with exaggerated slowness, each second a heavy weight. The metallic sweet smell grew stronger, clinging to the back of my throat. I glanced at the receptionist, a stern-faced woman with tightly pulled back hair. But she was engrossed in her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a relentless rhythm. She seemed oblivious to the oppressive atmosphere, to the unsettling stillness of the child. Then, a low, almost imperceptible hum began to emanate from the closed door leading to the examination rooms. It was a faint, rhythmic vibration, like a distant, struggling machine. It was barely audible, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. It seemed to pulse in sync with my own heartbeat, a sinister counterpoint to the mundane ticking of the clock. The child, I noticed, subtly shifted his gaze towards the door, a flicker of something unreadable in his wide eyes. Suddenly, the hum intensified, growing louder, more insistent, accompanied by a faint, high-pitched whine. It sounded like something was being processed. A wave of nausea washed over me. The metallic sweet smell became overpowering, making my stomach churn. The elderly woman across from me let out a small whimpering sound, clutching her handbag tighter. The young man with the pale face finally stirred, his eyes darting around the room, a flicker of fear in their depths. The receptionist, however, remained impassive, her fingers still dancing across the keyboard. It was as if she couldn't hear. It couldn't smell it, couldn't feel the palpable dread that was slowly suffocating the rest of us. Her composure was more terrifying than the sounds themselves. It suggested that this was normal, that this was routine, that this was simply how things were in Dr. Vance's office. The hum reached a crescendo, a piercing, unbearable shriek that seemed to vibrate in my very bones. The air crackled with an unseen energy. The lights flickered violently, casting grotesque, dancing shadows across the walls. The metallic sweet smell was now so strong it burned my nostrils, tasting like copper and decay. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound seemed to penetrate my skull, echoing in the hollow chambers of my mind. The elderly woman was openly weeping now, her body shaking uncontrollably. The young man was on his feet, his pale face contorted in a silent scream, his hands pressed against his temples, and the child was smiling, a slow, unnerving smile that stretched his lips, revealing small, perfectly white teeth. His eyes, still wide and unblinking, seemed to glow with an inner light, reflecting the chaotic flickering of the overhead bulbs. He was enjoying this. He was part of this. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, sending a jolt of pure terror through my system. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. The lights stabilized. The metallic sweet smell dissipated, leaving behind only the faint, familiar scent of antiseptic. The waiting room returned to its eerie quiet. The elderly woman was still whimpering, but the young man had collapsed back into his chair, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow and ragged. The receptionist, without missing a beat, looked up from her computer. "Sarah Miller," she called out, her voice calm and even, as if nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. "Dr. Vance will see you now." My blood ran cold. I looked at the child. He was still smiling, his eyes fixed on me, a silent invitation to the horrors that lay beyond that door. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but my legs wouldn't move. It was as if an invisible force was pulling me forward, drawing me into the heart of the darkness. I stood up slowly, my body stiff, my mind numb with terror. As I walked towards the door, I felt the child's gaze on my back, a cold, unwavering presence that seemed to follow my every step. I pushed the door open and stepped into the unknown, the metallic sweet smell growing stronger with every breath. The faint hum of the machine, a distant, chilling echo in the depths of the doctor's office. Story 2. The doctor's peculiar prescription. My name is David, and I'm a hypochondriac. Not the kind who just Googles symptoms, but the kind who genuinely believes every minor ache is a harbinger of doom. So, when I developed a persistent, nagging cough that wouldn't go away, despite numerous over-the-counter remedies, I naturally assumed the worst. My regular doctor, bless her patient soul, had referred me to a specialist, Dr. Alistair Finch, a pulmonologist with a reputation for unconventional, yet effective, treatments. His office was located in an old, unassuming building on the outskirts of town, far from the bustling medical complexes. The waiting room was small, dimly lit, and smelled faintly of old books and something else. Something earthy and damp, like freshly turned soil. There were no other patients, just a quiet, elderly receptionist with kind eyes who offered me a cup of herbal tea. I declined, my anxiety already at an all-time high. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by the gentle ticking of an antique grandfather clock in the corner. It was a silence that felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Dr. Finch himself was a peculiar man, tall, gaunt, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. He spoke in a low, measured tone, his words precise and deliberate. After a thorough examination, which involved more listening to my lungs than I thought necessary, he leaned back in his chair, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Mr. Miller," he began, his voice a low rumble, "your lungs are, for the most part, remarkably healthy. However, there is a resonance, a subtle disharmony, in your respiratory rhythm." I frowned. "A resonance? What does that mean, doctor?" He steepled his fingers, his gaze unwavering. "It means, Mr. Miller, that your lungs are picking up frequencies that are not meant for human ears. They are, in essence, acting as receivers for external transmissions." I stared at him, bewildered. "External transmissions? Are you saying I'm hearing things with my lungs?" He chuckled, a dry rustling sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. "Not hearing, precisely, more like sensing. Your body is attuned to a different spectrum of reality, a realm of whispers and echoes that most are fortunate enough to remain ignorant of." My heart began to pound. This was not the diagnosis I had expected. "So, what's the prescription, doctor?" "Some kind of earplugs for my lungs." I tried to inject some humor into my voice, but it came out as a nervous croak. Dr. Finch's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed a shade too long, too sharp. Not earplugs, Mr. Miller. A recalibration, a retuning of your internal frequencies. He then produced a small, ornate wooden box from his desk drawer. It was intricately carved with symbols I didn't recognize, ancient and unsettling. He opened it, revealing a single, perfectly smooth, obsidian sphere, about the size of a marble. It seemed to absorb all light, a tiny black hole in the palm of his hand. "This," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "is your cure. You are to ingest this sphere, Mr. Miller. One sphere, once a day, for 7 days. It will realign your internal antenna." I recoiled. "Ingest it? Are you serious? What is it?" "A natural mineral," he replied, his eyes glinting in the dim light, sourced from a very unique location. "It will cause no harm, only clarity." Despite my profound unease, there was something in his gaze, a strange, compelling authority that made me hesitate. My cough, which had been momentarily forgotten in the bizarre conversation, chose that moment to return with a vengeance, a harsh, racking sound that left me breathless. Dr. Finch simply watched, his smile unwavering. I took the box. The obsidian sphere felt unnaturally cold, heavy in my palm. I left his office in a daze, the earthy, damp smell clinging to my clothes, the dry rustle of his chuckle echoing in my ears. I went home, and after much internal debate, an anatherviolent coughing fit, I swallowed the first sphere. It slid down my throat surprisingly easily, leaving a faint, bitter aftertaste. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. My cough was gone, but when I woke up, something was different. The world seemed sharper, colors were more vibrant, sounds more succinct, and then I heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible hum emanating from the walls, from the floor, from the very air around me. It was the same hum I had heard in Dr. Finch's office, but now it was everywhere. It was the resonance he had spoken of. Over the next few days, as I continued to ingest the obsidian spheres, the hum grew louder, more defined. I started to hear whispers, faint and indistinct at first, then slowly coalescing into words. They were not human words. They were ancient, guttural sounds, a language that seemed to predate time itself. They spoke of things that should not be, of entities that lurked just beyond the veil of our reality, of a world teeming with unseen horrors. I stopped sleeping. The whispers were constant, a relentless chorus that filled my mind, leaving no room for thought, no room for peace. I saw things too, fleeting glimpses of shadows in my peripheral vision, shapes that writhed and twisted in the corners of my eyes, forms that seemed to coalesce from the very air, only to vanish when I turned to face them. My apartment, once a sanctuary, became a cage, filled with unseen presences, with the echoes of a terrifying, alien reality. On the 7th day, after swallowing the last sphere, the whispers reached a deafening crescendo. My head throbbed, my body convulsed. I fell to the floor, writhing, as the ancient sounds tore through my mind, revealing truths that shattered my sanity. I saw them then, clearly. The entities, they were everywhere, clinging to the walls, crawling on the ceiling, their forms shifting and undulating, their eyes, countless and burning, fixed on me. They were the source of the whispers, the architects of the resonance, the unseen inhabitants of a world I had unknowingly tapped into. I don't know how long I lay there, lost in the terrifying symphony of their existence. When I finally came to, the whispers were gone, the entities were gone, the world was silent once more, but I was not the same. My cough was gone, yes, but in its place was a profound, chilling clarity. I could still sense them, just at the edge of my perception, a faint echo of their presence, a lingering chill in the air. I knew they were still there, waiting, watching, just beyond the veil. I never went back to Dr. Finch's office. I tried to find him, but the building was empty, abandoned, as if it had never existed. The elderly receptionist was gone. The grandfather clock was gone. It was as if the entire experience had been a hallucination, a fever dream brought on by my hypochondria. But the memory was too vivid, too real, and sometimes, late at night, when the house is silent, I still hear that faint, guttural hum, a chilling reminder of the peculiar prescription that opened my eyes to a reality far more terrifying than any disease I could have imagined. Story 3. The Nurse's Unconventional Therapy. My name is Emily, and I was struggling with severe anxiety and insomnia. My doctor, concerned about my deteriorating health, recommended a specialized sleep clinic run by a Dr. Eris Thorne. It was located in a converted old mansion on a secluded estate, far from the city's hustle and bustle. The clinic promised a holistic approach, combining traditional therapy with unconventional, experimental methods. Desperate for a good night's sleep, I agreed. The clinic was beautiful, almost serene, with sprawling gardens and a quiet, contemplative atmosphere. But there was an underlying strangeness to it, a subtle unease that I couldn't quite place. The staff were all exceptionally polite, almost too polite, their smiles a little too wide, their eyes a little too vacant. The air always smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something cloying and sweet, like decaying flowers. My primary therapist was a nurse, Anya, a tall, slender woman with piercing blue eyes and a voice as smooth as silk. She was calm, reassuring, and possessed an uncanny ability to anticipate my thoughts. Her therapy sessions were unlike anything I had experienced before. Instead of talking, she would guide me through elaborate visualization exercises, often in a dimly lit room filled with the soft, rhythmic ticking of a metronome. One particular exercise involved visualizing a safe space within my mind. Nurse Anya would describe a tranquil forest, a peaceful meadow, a calm ocean. But as the sessions progressed, her descriptions became increasingly vivid, almost too real. I could feel the cool grass beneath my bare feet, smell the damp earth, hear the rustling of leaves. It was as if I wasn't just imagining it, but actually experiencing it. Then, the safe space began to change. The tranquil forest would become overgrown, the trees twisted and gnarled. The peaceful meadow would be shrouded in a thick, unnatural fog. The calm ocean would churn with unseen currents, its depths hinting at something vast and terrifying. I would try to resist, to return to the original, peaceful visualization, but Nurse Anya's voice, calm and hypnotic, would gently guide me deeper into the unsettling landscape. I started having nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams of being lost in an endless, dark forest, pursued by unseen entities, their whispers echoing through the trees. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the scent of decaying flowers clinging to my sheets. I tried to tell Nurse Anya about them, but she would simply smile, her eyes vacant, and say, "It's all part of the process, Emily. Embrace the journey." Her words, once soothing, now sent a chill down my spine. I felt trapped. The clinic, once a sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage. I tried to leave, but Nurse Anya would always find a way to dissuade me. Her arguments logical, her smile unwavering, her eyes holding a strange, compelling power. She would remind me of my anxiety, my insomnia, the progress I had made, subtly implying that leaving would undo everything. One night, I couldn't sleep. The nightmares were too vivid, too real. I decided to explore the clinic. The hallways were dimly lit, the silence profound. I found myself drawn to a room at the end of a long corridor, a room I had never noticed before. A faint, rhythmic ticking emanated from within, the same ticking as Nurse Anya's metronome. I pushed the door open slowly. The room was circular, with a high domed ceiling. In the center stood a large, ornate machine. its brass gears gleaming in the faint light, its pendulum swinging with a hypnotic rhythm. Around the machine, arranged in a semicircle, were several empty chairs, each with a set of headphones attached, and on a table nearby, a collection of small glass vials, each filled with a viscous, glowing liquid. As I stepped closer, I noticed something else. On the wall, a series of intricate diagrams depicting the human brain, but with strange, glowing pathways connecting different regions to a central, pulsating core. And beneath the diagrams, a series of photographs, faces, familiar faces. The faces of patients I had seen in the waiting room, their eyes wide, vacant, just like the staff. My blood ran cold. I looked at the machine, at the glowing vials, at the photographs, and then I understood. This wasn't therapy. This was something else entirely. Nurse Anya wasn't helping us overcome our anxieties. She was rewiring us, erasing our fears. Yes, but also erasing something else, something vital, something that made us human. The vacant eyes of the staff, the too wide smiles, they weren't cured. They were empty. Suddenly, the door creaked open behind me. I spun around. Nurse Anya stood there, her blue eyes piercing, her smile wider than ever. "Emily," she said, her voice a silken whisper. "You're awake. Good. It's time for your final session," I screamed, a raw guttural sound that tore through the silence. I tried to run, but she was too fast. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her touch cold. She dragged me towards one of the empty chairs, her eyes fixed on mine, a strange, triumphant gleam in their depths. I struggled, I fought, but my strength was no match for hers. She strapped me into the chair, the leather restraints biting into my wrists and ankles. She placed the headphones over my ears. The rhythmic ticking of the metronome filled my head, a hypnotic, inescapable rhythm. I saw her pick up one of the glowing vials. She uncorked it, and the cloying sweet scent of decaying flowers filled the air, stronger than ever. She brought it closer to my face. I tried to turn away, to resist, but I was paralyzed by fear. Her smile widened. "Don't worry, Emily," she whispered, her voice like a lullaby. "You'll sleep soundly now, forever." I don't remember what happened next. The ticking grew louder, the glowing liquid shimmered, and the scent of decaying flowers became overwhelming. I remember a flash of blinding light, a searing pain, and then nothing. When I woke up, I was in my own bed, in my own apartment. The anxiety was gone. The insomnia was gone. I felt peaceful, empty, but peaceful. I never went back to the clinic. I tried to find it, but the secluded estate was gone, replaced by a dense, overgrown forest. It was as if it had never existed. My doctor, when I called him, said he had never heard of Dr. Eris Thorne or his sleep clinic. He suggested I had simply found a way to cope with my anxiety, a psychological breakthrough. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear a faint, rhythmic ticking, like a distant metronome, and I catch a whiff of lavender and decaying flowers. And I look in the mirror, and I see my own eyes, wide and vacant, just like the staff at the clinic, and I smile, a wide, empty smile, because I sleep soundly now, forever. The unconventional therapy had worked. It had cured me of my anxiety and insomnia, but it had also cured me of something else, something I can't quite remember, something that used to make me, me. And sometimes, I wonder, what was the price of that peace? What did I leave behind in that circular room, strapped to that machine, with Nurse Anya's vacant eyes watching over me, and the scent of decaying flowers filling my lungs? The doctor's office, a place of healing, had become a place of profound, unsettling transformation. A chilling testament to the unseen horrors that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly benevolent intentions.